Hello and welcome to this second video on this new channel. There are a few fundamental points I would like to make from my own experience. One is pattern recognition. There are patterns in everything, and that saying, we are given signs by the day and signs by night. Well, consider, and if you are outdoors in nature, just look around you. The plant kingdom is described as being green, but I can show you here. So we've got basil, we've got bell peppers, rock roses, hibiscus, cactus, olive trees, cork trees. Whilst they are all green, there is variation, there is contrasts. This reality follows that pattern completely. The crest and the trough of a wave is another example. Uphill, downhill, hot and cold, night and day. This reality is a place where there is comparison within it, and also comparison within and without in several senses. So this story of the chief cornerstone, the capstone coming down onto the pyramid, if we internalize that, that would be the white dove descending from above in the biblical story, because they're all stories. Everything is a story. That's what we tell. It's what we store in the mind's eye is the story. So the descent of the chief cornerstone, the descent of the white dove, you could also say it's your higher self is taking control of the physical being, follows exactly the same pattern. Another example of this from a personal perspective, from the material viewpoint, I have amnesia. From the spiritual viewpoint, it is because I am a walking soul. Now, obviously, in this material realm, there are those that won't accept that as an explanation. They will rationalize and try and fit it all in the material realm. Now we have an aircraft going over. There's something in that. Let it pass by. Do you react and see it as something negative? Or are you able to stand back and observe and think, hold on, if there is a negative, there must be a contrast, just like the crest and trough of the wave. Day and night, everything follows a cycle in this reality. Winter, summer, as we go through the seasons, the time of day, the list is just sort of almost infinite, restricted only by its physicality. But with the amnesia or the walking soul, the result is exactly the same. The perspective on it is maybe different, but the result is the same in that there is a memory loss, which I see as having a blank canvas. Just like as a young child, you probably drew a picture, you weren't happy with it, so you discarded that first drawing. You started with a new blank piece of paper and you started again. In that, there is a pattern. It's one I've spoken about many times. How we observe walking when we're still in a high chair. We've never tried it before. We may have crawled, but we've not learnt and mastered the physical avatar on how to walk. You only have to observe a young baby, how they will look curiously at their own hands and feet and normally stuff everything in their mouth, learning from experience. But that walking process, that taking a step, you may fall over after just one step, but then you pick yourself up again. You repeat and repeat and repeat. We don't come into this reality knowing the 12 times table or even the words for different colours like green or blue. We have to master these things so it becomes second nature. So before we know it, when we have sufficiently mastered walking, we just do it without really giving it a second thought. It becomes second nature. That same pattern also applies to when something happens in your life that can seem very negative. Everything can seem to be going great, but then a flick of a switch, as it were, and the world seems to come crashing down around you. And it is so easy to then go into that reactionary state and only see the negatives and not see the positives. So a prime example I can give right in the moment is the previous phone had got 2 cracks on the screen. The battery on it wasn't as good as it was when it was brand new 3.5 years ago. So there's a positive that has come out of recent events already just on that. There's still other challenges. They're not obstacles, but they are challenges, and it is whether we react or we respond to things is what makes the difference. It comes down to how you feel. That is the true sight inside yourself, how you feel about something, the perspective you have on a particular thing. So a perfect example, and it's a beautiful illustration. It backs up what Albert Pike said about the symbol does not change, but what we see in the symbol does. And it is this one as the example I'm going to use. It was shown on our kayaks channel, the video about Nemesis. It's the MasterCard symbol. I'm pretty certain it's a logo for Specsavers in the UK, not in these colours. But if you notice, there are 2 circles like 2 eyes. The theme is always to take the middle path. There is our exit. In the way Jason describes it on our kayaks, if we see the yellow circle as this physical reality in this solar system, with the coming of the Nemesis X is another system where there will be what is called a contact period of 60 years. But I don't know about you, but what struck me straight away about that symbol, if we turn to the linear from the vertical, I'm sure you've all seen this symbol below, which you'll often see on the backs of cars associated with Christianity. It's effectively 2 arcs, 2 parts of a circle, and you'll notice there is the X, the crossing point. That's where we're going. I perceive this reality as a diagnostic zone, a place where we learn from making mistakes, or what we perceive as mistakes at the time, because with hindsight, that can be a wonderful thing when you can look back and see why something happened for you rather than it happening to you, and seeing it purely in that negative default sense that we are trained to look at everything. As much as anything else, this symbol with the 2 circles taking the middle path, if you see the yellow representing Earth, I've got a fly buzzing around here, and then you see the orange as being the unseen, your higher self. It is bringing the 2 together. So if I were to move those 2 circles so there is a slight area that doesn't have the overlap, that is pretty much what the amnesia that I have is like as a walk-in soul. I have memories of being in a womb. I have memories of up to really about 3 years of age, and then they start to very much fade. But I'm just left with the experience of the emotions of the event rather than the details of the who, the when, and the where. But that's enough. And then the other end I have that other sliver of since March 21st, 2022. So everything else in between is like this blank canvas. But again, there's a pattern with calendars. Calendars are created so they look forward to calculate when a specific day is coming. It's a pattern that we can adopt because we cannot change the past. That said, there is a contrast in that. There is such a thing as the law of reversal. So if you happen to injure yourself, it's something I've spoken about on previous videos on the old channel, where I had a fall, hurt myself, and then in my mind immediately I replayed the event without having the fall and the injury. After a night's sleep, it had reprogrammed the body so I didn't have the aches and the soreness that I would have had without doing that. It had reconfigured the body just by staying neutral to such things, rather than going into that negative, oh, why has this happened to me, this victim state. But at the same time, it is about balance. It is not going over fully into the unseen and just staying there, because we are here in this physical reality to have the experience. An analogy I can give to you, following on the same pattern as learning to walk. You can read 100 books on how to drive a motor vehicle, but you're not going to know until you get into a motor vehicle. You get to feel how light is that steering, how much pressure do you need to put on those foot pedals to accelerate and to brake, and so on. When we first do it, it is all very conscious mechanical thoughts. I need to check the mirrors, check the parking brake is on, check I've got my seatbelt on, all these kind of things. But it comes to a point where it becomes second nature. That is the pattern to find in oneself. And you'll see what is reflected if you look on an ambulance. It will say emergency response unit. It is not a reaction. It's not a reactionary force. It is responding to a situation. So when you're faced with something that would seem negative, so with being arrested last Wednesday, I could have allowed the panic attack sensation to take over, but no. We'll go with what the intuition is saying here and just see this through, because it is something I effectively initiated from the frequency that I'm on that goes out to this interactive external world, which will then bring things about. Now, often, because they are without judgment and they are from a neutral field, initially they may seem very negative, and I have certainly had many testimonies that confirm this, that initially things can be presented that seem very negative. But if everything was to go smoothly, we would not expand, we would not gain the experience, we would become stagnant, and it would lead to boredom rather than creation. What we're effectively doing is the same as when you have a rain cloud. You don't focus on, oh no, it's going to rain, in that negative thought pattern. You allow it to just pass over, because what will follow will be blue skies and sunshine. Because if we react, we put ourselves on a very different trajectory as we walk this path between birth and death. With the growing portfolio of experiences, that then comes that we are able to see things in a new way, in a far more objective way, from a higher perspective, seeing the bigger picture, and then we are able to respond. We're confronted with certain situations and things. It's like, do I react to it out of fear, that fight, flight, freeze or fawn? Or are we to take the script and then overwrite it with a far more positive energy to it, and then the world will change around you. But the world, I would suggest with spirit, it's swirled, because it does seem a very crazy reality that we experience. But what actually is a world? What are we referring to? Because same pattern, wheels within wheels. There is an external world around us, a physical world that we all are here to have an experience of. But within that world, and you'll hear the expression said, if somebody is eccentric, it may be said, oh, they're in a world of their own. Or if somebody goes into a sort of like almost a trance state where they're so deep in thought about something, it can be observed, oh, they're off on a world of their own. We all have an internal world inside us. We all have a universe inside us. That is the U-Inverse. There is a contrast and there is a reflection. There is this pattern. So what is reflected in the sky, in the night sky, those stars are just reflecting what is going on internally inside of us. It's almost beyond human comprehension, and it is a struggle to find the words to even describe what is beyond all of this. And we can only use words and use cross comparison with things within this reality to try and even give an idea of what is beyond. But from my experience, it is something magical, it is something wonderful. There are aspects of this reality that may seem unpleasant. A lot of them, they're not things we even witness firsthand. They are just stories that are given to us. It's hearsay, which is a heresy. Do we make judgment on these things, or do we just observe and see things with a new perspective? Or do we just stay in that reactionary state and see them in a purely negative way? I'm going to build upon this theme in future videos on this new channel. There's a lot more to talk about this. We're already up to nearly 20 minutes. I don't want to make them too long. It's like food. Small tasters, appetizers, to which we can then start looking towards the main course, as it were. But far easier to digest in small portions. The same as physical food, follows the same pattern. This is mind food, which in turn feeds the heart, which is the center of your being. Excuse me. So yeah, I think we'll leave that there for this video, because I feel I have packed a lot into this. But pattern recognition, that is one of the key elements to find, and it can be done by cross comparison. It can be done by perception. How do we observe things? So do you see the plant kingdom and just describe it as green, or are you able to see the contrasts and the variations, the different shades of green? Because whilst we have this common experience of birth to death, they take very different paths, very individual paths. So there is a commonality, but at the same time there's an individuality, and the key word, or the key part of that word, is the in. The in divide you all. So the division, that center point between those two circles in that symbol. So I'll end this here and carry on in similar vein on the next video, and we'll go deeper into this, and I will help guide and unlock these things for you, to help you, whilst we all have an individual journey. It is about being in service of others, helping others, because there are so many rabbit holes we can fall into, and they can be very difficult to pull ourselves out of. It has to come from within oneself, but it is very much appreciated when we are given a helping hand, which can be a hidden hand, the benevolent hidden hand, or it can be help from another. Again, coming back to the symbol, if your world is that yellow world, that yellow circle, when you come into contact with another human being or an animal or whatever it happens to be, you're coming into contact with another world. There is a contact point between those two worlds. Now multiply that by the circle of people that you know in your lives, and just consider you've got a flower of life pattern there. Isn't that wonderful? So I think that's a perfect place to stop. And I just noticed it's 20 minutes and 44 seconds. There is something in that. I will talk about that again from a personal perspective that I hope will show a pattern to you that you can then see in your own journey. So with that, as always, unconditional love to you all.